Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's installment of Dystopian Simulation Radio. I'm your host Chris.
I'm Linz.
And together we are clueless. But Linz, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm very hyper today, as you probably gathered from the previous audio messages that I sent you throughout the day. But feeling good, back in Blighty, and ready to hear I hope a fun episode from you after last week's kind of horrific but very, very interesting true crime episode that I covered.
Yeah, it is more along the fun lines of things, I'll say that. I mean, don't get me wrong, listeners, don't abandon us right now. There's all kinds of things. I promise you at least one person will be punched in this story. So
is it me?
We'll see how it goes. But we are going to be talking today about a very interesting topic. Before we get into that, though, just wanted to say a couple of plugs and things. So don't forget that we have an Instagram page, which is, Linz?
That is Instagram at d.s.radio.
And within that, there is a little link at the top, a Linktree link, and that takes you to all of our socials, all of our things, all of our links. So like our Instagram, our Patreon, where you can buy Linz's book. And there's even a SpeakPipe as well. And if you don't know what SpeakPipe is, it's like an online answering machine. So you can call up and you can tell us anything you want. And in the future, we're collecting them at the moment, but we are going to be doing a listener special where we'll be playing them on air. So if you want to tell us about some sort of paranormal experience you've had, what you thought of one of the episodes, if you've got something to add to any of the episodes, call in, SpeakPipe. It's free. You don't need to sign up or anything as far as I'm aware. You can just record and off you go.
Yeah, and I have heard from some listeners that you can record a 90-second message. So if you have some kind of story that's like more long form that you want to share with us, you can just record it on your phone or wherever and email it to us at our email address, which is also on our Instagram. You can find everything there, everything in the DSR world that you would possibly need to contact us. So go ahead and send us your stories. We'd be really happy to listen to them. And we will play them here, so keep that in mind.
That being said, let's get into the episode itself. So, Linz, quick question for you.
Ooh.
Have you ever looked up?
Yes, I'm not a dog and I can look up.
well, good. Perhaps you've seen a large object floating in the sky?
Depends what situation I'm in, Chris.
Quite a common one. You often see it at night, a large white object.
The moon.
The moon, yes.
Okay.
Today we are talking about the moon. Or rather, the moon landings, the conspiracy theories surrounding them, and also the future of space.
I thought you were going to say the future of the moon. I was like, oh God, I have blocked all news updates on my computer. Is something happening with the moon? Like, please don't drop that bomb on me now, Chris.
Well, you will find out in this episode.
Oh God.
This episode was requested by one of our listeners, Joanne Darling. So, Joanne, I hope you enjoy this episode.
And what a lovely name. Darling.
It is, isn't it?
So cute.
Linz, how many people have walked on the moon, do you think?
Like, oh God. Like, famously a handful, but probably a shit ton more. So I really wouldn't like to guess.
Put a number on it. Let's see.
27.
Okay, well, no. Actually, less than that. The answer is 12.
Damn, okay. Right, that's.
So
I honestly thought they would be a lot more.
You would think so.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the reasons why there aren't that many. But the people who claim to have walked on the moon are, in order, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Charles Conrad, Alan Bean, Alan B. Shepard Jr., Edgar D. Mitchell, David R. Scott, James B. Irwin, John W. Young, Charles M. Duke, Eugene Cernan, and finally Harrison H. Schmidt.
Mr. Bean. I like
Yes.
that. I like where
Mr.
this
Bean.
is going. Tim Armstrong, Buzz Lightyear, and Mr. Bean.
Well, Mr. Bean is an alien.
Huh? Oh, yes, he is.
Yeah,
Like
not
in the
seen-
intro, he's either an alien or an angel because he beams down, doesn't he?
Yeah, he literally falls from the sky.
Yeah, angel or alien or devil. Up
There's
to
a
you,
fine
listeners.
line
Take
between
a
them.
vote. Yeah.
Now, all of these people walked on the moon during 6 separate missions between 1969 and 1972. There were due to be 7, but Apollo 13 famously wasn't able to land on the moon and had to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and had to report a problem to Whitney Houston, I think. That's right. I don't know. I've only seen Deep Impact once. However, some believe that the real answer to how many people have walked on the moon is 0.
Ooh, but like as in human. Oh, I guess people are humans. So I'm going to shut up there. That line of thought is going nowhere.
The jury's out on some people, but yes, most people you would class as humans. So a lot of people do believe that they were all a hoax. Before we kind of get into this, though, and the theories and so on, what do you think, Linz? Did we go to the moon?
Yes. I mean, why not? Yes. I don't know why you'd have to fake that. I mean, we've been to space. We've been around. I mean, why? I mean, maybe to show up the Russians. Maybe we went a bit later. Who knows? You know, like I say we, but we're talking about America, aren't we?
We are, but we'll just ride on their coattails. I mean,
Okay. So basically us, because they are us.
yeah. As we record this, there was a very big publicised space launch from Cornwall in England this week, which didn't work.
I don't know why that's making me laugh. And I knew nothing about it. Granted, I have just come back a few days ago, but yeah, that Cornish people going to space just fills me with joy. Just an ice cream in one arm and a like Greenland shark under the other.
Okay, so enough about if we did or didn't land. Firstly, let's examine why did we want to go to the moon in the first place? Linz, I think you've kind of already touched on an idea there, but why do you think that we wanted to go to the moon?
To beat the Russians and, you know, just to put flags in things, as we like to do.
That's exactly it. President Kennedy famously said in his Rice University speech,
"We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organise and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one that we are unwilling to postpone, and one that we intend to win, and the others too."
oh, lovely reading and well done for avoiding the temptation to do a President Kennedy impression.
I felt like it was my speech. I got really into it for some reason.
We choose to go to the moon.
That's more of a Chris move. I could never, Chris.
Kennedy might have said that. However, the real reason was to stop communism from spreading to the moon.
Communism will never touch the cheese.
The USA and Russia were locked in a space race, which evolved from the missile race following on from World War II. As the Cold War's exothermic process progressed, the USA sent some fruit flies into space. And
Excuse me?
Well, you've got to start off small, but they quite quickly jumped from fruit flies to a monkey named Albert II.
Aww. What happened to Albert I?
He died on re-entry impact.
Ah.
Now, as we've covered in our Is Hitler Still Alive episode, the answer might surprise you folks. Check it out in the archive. This was all thanks to the Nazis now receiving US government paychecks under Operation Paperclip. The Soviet Union responded to this monkey business by sending several dogs into space, followed by Laika, a mongrel dog who went into orbit aboard Sputnik 2, or as it was nicknamed in the West, Mutnik.
I didn't know that, but that's a classic.
That's not one of my jokes.
It sounds like one of your jokes.
It
I think
definitely does.
you're definitely a vintage man in a modern time, Chris.
Nobody was laughing just 4 years later, though, when the Ruskies put the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into space. Okay, so I'd like you to take a look at Albert II, and please let us know what he looked like.
Okay. Oh, Albert! Is he a spider monkey? He's a small monkey.
Well, it's a small rocket.
No, wait, this picture is really confusing me. I can't tell if it's a joke or if it's an actual picture.
It's either a really small rocket or a massive monkey.
Yeah, but is this a promotional picture where they just put him on a little rocket to go, in the newspapers?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so is he a spider monkey? No, he's not a spider monkey. What is he?
He's a space monkey, that's what he is.
But I was thinking like a chimp or something.
No, I think that came much later.
Yeah, this is just a little fella. This is a little guy. Oh, I feel so bad for him now. Not that I wouldn't feel bad if he was bigger, but because he's small, I feel extra bad because he's so cute.
Oh. Well, have a look at the Russians' attempt at an adorable space creature.
Mm-hmm.
This is Laika, the dog.
Oh, I have seen Laika. Yeah.
Mutnik.
Oh, Mutnik. I have seen Laika. She's kind of like a Jack Russell Cross or something. She's so cute.
What do you think about that little harness that she has? She looks ready for action.
Yeah, she's just a little Jack Russell Cross, and she looks... I feel bad because she has no idea, that she's going on some terminal space mission, and she's so enthusiastic and cute. Oh, I can't. This is too much for me, Chris. I'm going to cry.
Well, let's get back on target then. The space race was not really about space, in all honesty. It was about power. Rather, it was about technological power. Following World War II, which had closed its final chapter when the USA dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, it became evident that we'd moved into a new age, where technology would determine the world's leading superpower, not just who had the pointiest stick. The space race became symbolic for both sides of the Cold War. Who would be the first to develop the technology needed to conquer the new battlefields of the atmosphere and beyond? Shockingly to many, the Soviet Union was winning when it successfully launched the first manned spaceflight. This caused President Kennedy's head to explode.
Chris!
Phrasing. It caused him deep distress. And therefore he went to Congress on the 25th of May, 1961, to push the issue of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely before the end of the decade. Kennedy was trying to redefine the meaning of winning a race. Not just by finishing the race, by getting a man into space, but by crossing the finish line whilst building a house of cards on top of an armadillo with a nervous disposition. JFK, though, was unfortunately assassinated in 1963. Ride, Johnny, ride. And never saw a man land on the moon. It was, in fact, President Richard Nixon who watched on nervously on July 16th, 1969, when Apollo 11 touched down on the celestial body that we know as the moon. It was by no means a sure bet, and with images of ex-mammals in their minds, Nixon's aides made sure that a disaster speech was ready for him, which was actually rediscovered in 1999. So I have the never-used speech here. If these men did die on fiery impact or they discovered aliens that ate them on the moon, would you like to hear it?
I would love to hear it.
Fate has ordained that these men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery. They also know there is no hope for mankind. Sorry. But they also know there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice.
Toby, I can keep this up.
No, maybe you can read it in your normal voice, just in case you hate that.
Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, the search for truth and understanding. They will be mourned by their families and friends. They will be mourned by their nation. They will be mourned by the people of the world. They will be mourned by a Mother Earth that dared send two of her sons into the unknown. In their exploration, they stirred the people of the world to feel as one. In their sacrifice, they bind more tightly the brotherhood of man. In ancient days, men looked at the stars and saw their heroes in constellations. In modern time, we do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood. Others will follow, and surely find their way home. Man's search will not be denied, that these men were the thirst, and they will remain in the foremost in our hearts. For every human being who looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of another world that is forever mankind.
You gotta give it to him, Chris. They don't write him like that anymore.
They don't. I think it might have been the same speechwriter that wrote Kennedy's, because they like the repetition, don't they?
Yeah.
The dramatic effect repetition.
I mean, to be honest, whoever wrote that, kudos, because I was actually kind of waiting to laugh. And then I was like, this is so beautiful. I want this person to write my eulogy.
Well, fortunately, Nixon did not need that speech, as the astronauts completed their mission, landed on the moon, beat the Ruskies, and were back for breakfast. They did not get abandoned on the moon and die, which would have been a rather sour ending to things. But,
Back for bagels, baby. USA. USA.
From the US perspective, the race was won. Russia felt that they'd already passed the finish line years prior. Either way, man had walked on the lunar surface for the first time in human history. Neil Armstrong stepped out of the lunar module Eagle and uttered the immortal line.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Do you think he thought of that, like, all the way?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's actually messed up because a part of the audio clipped out, because it's actually one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind, because it makes no sense. Because in this context, man and mankind mean the same thing.
Well, I guess you could interpret it as in man as being one man.
You could do.
Man and mankind are one and the same, but I feel like, yeah, that is kind of weird. I never thought about that, but it works. I mean, with context, it works.
One giant leap for mankind.
Mankind!
That's what he said right before he jumped off a Hell in a Cell.
Wrestling reference, everybody. Don't worry, we got one in.
Number one. So Buzz Aldrin then followed Neil Armstrong out of the module to infinity and beyond. In total, the astronauts spent 2 hours and 26 minutes on their moonwalk. But the best part of a day in total on the surface of the moon. They collected just shy of 50 pounds of material, including moon rocks. They conducted several experiments, planted a flag of the USA, and even took the time to speak to President Nixon on the phone.
Ooh.
The whole thing was broadcast on TV and defined a generation. People watched on as the first men walked on the moon in the history of mankind. But did it happen? There are claims that all of this was fabricated. But let's explore just who, how, and crucially, why.
This is always something I've wanted to know about, Chris, because I've always known, like, you know, the moon, the conspiracy of the moon landing and everything, but I never actually looked into it. But I have seen, like, you know, the wind is blowing, there's shadows here, there, and everywhere where they shouldn't be, and I'm just like, okay. Like, well, I don't want to look into this too much. So I'm glad you're here today to sort of break it down to those of us who were semi-entertained, but not interested enough to go to deep dive, you know.
That's the sweet spot of where I exist.
Ah, okay.
Let's start off with why. So, Linz, why do you think you would fake the moon landings, should you want to?
To beat the good old Russian boys.
That's it. Better dead than red.
Yeah.
The USA were losing the space race, and quite frankly, failure was not an option. But cheating was. By faking the moon landings, the USA could reaffirm the narrative that they were the technological superpower of the world, and gone where no man had gone before. Winning the space race was gaining more and more importance as a proxy war in Vietnam was becoming harder and harder to win, and public opinion was turning. As for conspiracy goes, both to win the space race and to distract from the Vietnam War, NASA conspired to fake the moon landings. So win if you can, but always cheat, as they say.
As everyone says, you know.
So Linz, just think about it. If you're head honcho at NASA and you've been told by Nixon that you need to fake these to win, and you need to recruit somebody in 1969 to fake a moon landing, who would you recruit?
Well, I'd probably need a good director, a cinematographer, someone who knows about lighting, an actor to imagine of gravity, maybe some kind of sci-fi movie actor. I don't know how I would pull off these shenanigans, but...
Well, you know what? You're extremely close to the purported truth.
Damn.
According to conspiracy theorists, following the release of 2001 A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick was approached. And for those not even know, Stanley Kubrick is one of the most celebrated directors of all time. He was born in England, and he was director of such classics as The Shining, Dr. Strangelove, and Full Metal Jacket.
Won't you give it to me?
2001 A Space Odyssey was released in 1968, and at the time it portrayed the most advanced effects and realistic depiction, as we understood it, of space on celluloid. Star Wars, of course, not being released for a further 9 years and being the most accurate depiction of life in outer space. So, of course, he would be the natural choice to fake the moon landings in a movie studio. Now, how did he supposedly do it? Well, if you believe in this faked moon landing theory, Kubrick reportedly filmed Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong live from an unknown studio. So he didn't actually use actors, he used the actual astronauts to maintain a degree of truth and honesty within his work.
Okay, sounds legit.
So they were live, but this followed on after the actual live feed of the rocket launch and the broadcast from the orbit had taken place. So essentially what it's saying is the conspiracy holds that the launch of a rocket actually happened, but the moonwalk was the element that was faked. So what evidence is there of this? Well, it's been largely put forth in William Casing's book. Largely put forth by William Casing in his book, We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle. We had the following evidence. And with a title like that, there's no bias at all, obviously.
That's a very long descriptive title.
Yeah. So we have 5 major points that he points out. And then there are some retorts that we have to say from NASA.
The flag waves. Surely it should be static in a vacuum?
Yes, but it only moves in response to the pole being fixed in place by the astronauts.
There are shadows in all directions, yet there is only one source of light on the moon, the sun. This must mean it was lit by studio lighting.
Actually, there are multiple sources of light on the moon. The sun, the Earth, and not to mention the lights fixed to the lunar module.
There was no blast zone from the landing vessel, yet there were footprints left by the astronauts.
It's all about weight distribution in reduced gravity. There is more pressure per inch from a human footprint than a moon lander, despite the latter being much heavier in reality.
There are no stars. Where are the stars?
The landings took place during the lunar daytime, and much like on Earth, in the daytime, the daylight drowns out the starlight.
If Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, how was he filmed descending the ladder?
There were multiple cameras on the outside of the module.
How convenient.
Yes, it is very convenient, all of these explanations, yet they also make sense. From this book, though, 1,000 theories and countless conspiracies spawned, but none more prevalent than Bart Sibrel, a TV commercial director turned moon landing truther.
Oh, gosh.
Sibrel's documentary, titled A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, is freely available on YouTube, and I'd encourage you to give it a watch to see the examples that Sibrel lays out. But what I'd like to do is let him summarize his ideas for you.
Some people say it's hard to believe that the moon landings were faked. I say it's hard to believe that they were real. What NASA is claiming is that they went 1,000 times farther than they can go today with 50-year-older technology on the very first attempt with 1/1,000,000th the computing power in all of NASA than is in a cell phone. If Toyota said that they made a car 50 years ago that could go 50,000 miles on a gallon of gasoline, and yet today their best car could only go 50 miles per gallon, or 1,000th the distance, wouldn't the fraud of the previous claim be obvious? And yet this is exactly the moon landing fraud. And yet people don't see it because of their emotional attachment to it. If they could go to the moon with 1960s technology, men would be in another solar system by now. Men would have walked on Mars 10 years later, 40 years ago, which never happened. And there would be bases on the moon there today, of which there are none. It's the only time in the history of the world that technology that cost $175 billion was deliberately destroyed afterwards. Would Bill Gates spend $175 billion to make the first computer, and then when he was done, throw it and the schematics in the trash? But that's what NASA claims that they did. They only did that to destroy the evidence of the fraud, which is proof itself that they didn't go. Because if they really went, they would never destroy the technology.
Okay, Harry Hill. But first of all, I love the way that he, like, really stiffly, without turning his neck, just sort of turned his entire body round from a frontwards facing position to facing the camera.
It was very, Mr. Bond, I've been expecting you.
And it was also very sort of like, have you had an accident in the workplace?
Have you tripped and fallen and it wasn't your fault?
Yes, so we'll link this video in the description, but he was a bald Caucasian man with very thick square-rimmed glasses on and sort of a long 70s collar, and I think a suit jacket, can't remember. He turns around on a computer chair, he's got screens behind him, and he very confidently talks about how all of this was set in his studio. I'm sure you heard that from the clip. Yeah, to be honest with you, Chris, like, I don't know if, like, he was basing that all on one picture alone, and then the rest of it was kind of a rant. He was like, these shadows are not in the appropriate place. Look at this lamppost at midday in America. And then he started talking about, like, Steve Jobs or something. And it was like, the iPhone kind of discredits everything he said. Because it's like, one year the iPhone is like, I have a 2-pixel camera. And the next year it's like, I can film your DNA. So, you know, it's probably just it's a budget thing. But
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on, like, you know, but I don't think that's enough to base your entire conspiracy theory on. Maybe not one still image, but I don't know. Who am I?
Well, I'll tell you that NVIDIA, yes, the people that make the graphics cards for your PC, ran a simulation using their technology to show that other light sources did exist on the moon. And once again, you can see that in long form on YouTube with a quick search for NVIDIA moon landings. Now, I don't put too much stock in this argument particularly, but before we go any further, Linz, Did we land on the moon? Yes or no? Buzz Aldrin with your answer.
Yes, I'm going to say yes. I mean, I don't think it's an impossible feat. What do I know, Chris? It's a dystopian simulation. Is anything really real? That's the questions.
Cybrel's point about the fact that NASA supposedly went to the moon with less technology than you'll find in a modern iPhone, yet has never achieved the same feat in a modern era, I do find to be probably his most compelling argument. Before we go on more about that, one last note about Bart before we leave Mr. Cybrel. He once lured Buzz Aldrin to a hotel under the pretense of him giving an interview regarding space for a Japanese children's TV show. When the 72-year-old cosmonaut arrived, he was confronted by Cybrel on the street, who attempted to get Aldrin to swear on a Bible that he had walked on the moon. Aldrin refused, but gleefully punched the 32-year-old in the jaw.
He's very punchable.
I'm very happy to say I do have footage of this.
Yes! Okay. Oh my gosh. You're making my week with this, Chris.
Okay.
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
Yeah.
You got to keep shooting, man. Okay, well, you can put it on your shoulder. Don't be shy.
Just come with me, Buzz.
You really like it, don't you?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented
get
myself.
away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Okay, so there we had Buzz Aldrin in a pale blue suit with a lady next to him, linking it in his arm. Don't know what relation she is to him, but they're trying to cross the street and this guy comes off. What's his name again, Chris?
Bart Cybrel.
Yes, Bart Simpson and the Space Mutants. He comes up with the Bible and he's like, swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon. And then he's like, please go away, sir. And you have hotel staff trying to go, okay, leave Buzz alone, And then he calls him, what is it? A liar and a thief.
Yeah.
I don't know where the thief part came from, but then Buzz just goes, he's cornered him actually. He has tried to walk away peacefully. The guy corners him and he whacks him in the face. And I think in that situation, you kind of deserve it because you have refused to leave and called someone a coward, a liar, and a thief, which that doesn't make any sense to me, but
The best part about that video, though, is that unlike other videos where celebrities get punched, like Danzig getting punched.
Sucker punched. Let's add it, sucker punched.
Sucker punched. That Bart Cybrel is mic'd up at the time, so it makes a really satisfying comic book thwack.
And a thief.
I think that I'm not that I encourage violence, but that is well deserved. I mean, you can't walk up to somebody when they've tried to peacefully walk away, get in their face centimeters away from them and call them a coward, a liar, and a thief, and not get smashed in the face. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But Buzz Aldrin gave him every chance not to get punched in the face.
He did. He walked away many times and. Yeah, I don't know. If you have to corner somebody for a confession, and it's kind of threatening to corner somebody and not leave and shove a Bible in their face, I think that's quite threatening also. Maybe not physically, but definitely verbally. That is harassment. So, at that point, things get strained. It's, Buzz. Yeah. Good old Buzz.
Cybrel, I believe, did try to press charges, but it was thrown out by a judge after watching that footage.
Yeah, I mean, you can't not throw it out after that. Come on. And, it wasn't a bloody punch. It was just a warning punch, let's say. I'm sure Buzz has got a lot more behind that fist if he needs it. To infinity.
Oh, dear.
And the abyss.
So returning back to the fact that since the Apollo missions, we've not visited the moon since 1979, I think that's probably the most reasonable argument for the moon landings being a hoax. Why did we stop? Well, I'll tell you why. And the answer, as with most things in life, is money. And you could say that the cost of going to the moon is sky high. Or out of this world. Or astronomical.
Yes, astronomical. Good.
So originally there had been 20 Apollo missions planned, but once the mission of landing on the moon had been achieved, NASA suffered gradual funding cuts over the next decade or so until it was unsustainable financially to launch missions to the moon. The United States spent $25.8 billion on Project Apollo between 1960 and 1973, or that would be approximately $257 billion when adjusted for inflation in 2023.
Ay, ay, ay.
However, to put that in perspective, the sequel to Avatar, Avatar 2, Baby I Got the Blues, is out now in theatre, and that cost $350 million to make. So, Mr. Cameron, how about this? Just stop making Avatar movies, and we can afford to go to the moon again. After just a few years of saving, we don't need any more Avatar movies. Nobody wanted any more in the first place, and we can go back to the moon. Everybody's happy.
Maybe less wars and less Avatar, and then more moon.
Less wars, more moon.
The next GoFundMe for, well, the first GoFundMe for DSR. Less Avatar, less wars, more moon. Send us away.
I think that's going to be one of our pieces of merch coming up, potentially.
Yes!
In recent years, though, the space race has somewhat been revived. Donald Trump announced that he was reconvening the National Space Council after a near 25-year hiatus, while standing next to a very confused-looking Buzz Aldrin, presumably preoccupied with the thought that, as a national treasure, he might just be able to get away with punching a sitting president. NASA has since planned the Artemis project, and Artemis 1 launched in November 2022. It was an unmanned test flight to the moon.
Artemis Prime.
The next step is Artemis 2, which is due in 2024, which will take humans into the orbit of the moon once more. And then finally, according to the plan, which they have said may vary depending on circumstance, in 2025, Artemis 3 will launch, which will finally put humans back on the surface of the moon. So they can finally answer the question, is it really made of cheese?
And what kind of cheese is it?
Wensleydale.
Cheddar. No, cheddar. No, Edam. It's definitely Edam. We need a vote.
You can put a poll on the DSR thing after this. What cheese would the main?
We are, but it's definitely Edam.
So NASA says, though, that this is just the first step towards eventually visiting Mars and colonization of that and the moon. However, there is another player in the space race now. No, not the Russians or the Chinese, but the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and his company SpaceX.
I didn't think I'd be thinking about Elon Musk today.
Well, get ready. The next paragraph's got quite a lot on him. Yes, the $144.4 billion man has plans to head to Mars and colonize the hell out of it by developing the tallest and most powerful rocket ever built, called Starship.
Wow.
Well, he didn't get rich by being original. The rocket will be completely reusable, as it can land vertically, as opposed to becoming space junk when the command module detaches and then rockets down to Earth, then parachutes into the waters of the traditional style. If you've seen the prototype videos of this on YouTube, they are quite incredible. It's like something out of a science fiction movie. The rocket comes down, and then it has these sort of vents and thrusters or anti-thrusters, or I don't know what you call them. I'm just a podcast host. I don't know about this. It's like it hovers and lands down, and it's quite incredible. So again, more YouTube research for you. Take a look at that vertical landing rocket. Now, prototypes have made low and high altitude test flights at this time of recording, but as of now, no orbital tests have occurred using Starship, and reportedly, this is due to the difficulty in getting a launch license for it. They're going to hopefully get over it this year, is the plan. But conceivably, within the next decade, a manned mission will head to Mars, according to Mr. Musk anyway, who feels that we all have a manned mission to Mars by 2030. NASA feels like it's more like 2 decades away. I mean, if that 2030 deadline gets a bit too close for comfort, I mean, Elon could just fake it, right?
Yeah, you definitely could. You could deep fake it with probably like a toy, like a Matchbox rocket.
Finances are the limiting factor here on Earth. Scrap capitalism and problem solved, right? Well, no. Resources would actually be the biggest issue in space exploration. To go to the moon takes just a few days, but the most valuable resource of all time is not on our side. So the moon would just take 3 days to get to. So nice and easy.
Is that real? Is that true?
Yeah.
3 days.
3 days.
Damn.
Mars? Any idea how long SpaceX thinks it will take to get there?
Like forever. Like a year?
Less than that, 6 months.
Oh, okay. Right. I guess that is a long time.
That's kind of doable as well.
It's kind of doable, but yeah. I guess it would feel a lot longer in there.
However, it then starts going rapidly up from there. So if you wanted to go to Venus, it would take 15 months.
Ah, okay.
If you wanted to go to Jupiter, that's going to take you 6 years.
But that's the coolest planet.
If you wanted to go to Mercury, it'd be 6.5 years.
Too hot, no thanks.
If you wanted to go to Saturn, it would be 7 years.
Oh, that's the coolest planet.
If you wanted to go to Uranus,
No thanks.
it'd be 8.5 years.
Been there. No.
And if you want to go to Pluto, I'm still counting that as a planet.
It is a planet
Get out
again.
Of here. It is.
I think.
I think, who knows? But Pluto and Neptune take between 9.5 to 12 years to get to, depending on who you ask.
The Sweden of the outer space.
Now, if you wanted to go to Alpha Centauri, which is the nearest closest star to us, which scientists very hope have potentially habitable planets, any idea how long it would take humans to get there?
15.5 years.
You're a little bit off. A bit more up.
30 years.
Okay, I think we'll be playing this game for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take you out of the misery here. To get at Alpha Centauri, it would take 18,000 years.
Oh my freaking god. I can send my skeleton there. You know, like if you're on your deathbed, you could just say, like, send me there. That would be good.
Unless we invent, hyperspace technology, as Star Wars has led me to believe, should be quite readily available. Yeah, it's unlikely we'll be going to there anytime soon.
Boo. Alpha
But you must-
Centauri. Worst place ever.
Well, you must remember as well, all those figures that I gave you, you need to double them for a return trip when packing your space bags.
No one's coming back from Alpha Centauri, though. Like, they probably have really big grasshoppers and stuff, so why come back to Earth just for Jack Russell Terriers?
All of the resources that refragile humans need to survive on Earth, let alone in space, where nobody can hear you scream for ice cream. 6 months, a year's worth of resources, food, water, everything else that we might need, Netflix, that's quite a lot. And the thing that actually might get us to the point of doing this, it's actually tourism.
Oh.
Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, William Shatner, they've all been to space in one form or another. Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa went to space, and later this year, he's going to go on a round-the-moon rocket tour, courtesy of Elon Musk's SpaceX, and at the cost of quite a pretty penny, I am very sure.
That's how he's getting investors. Okay.
That's it, tourism. And
Yeah.
these
Japanese
things cost a lot of
tourism.
money.
We're going to have to set up a new Paris hotline, a Paris-style hotline for the moon.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any omiyage that you can bring back from the moon, but I'm sure that they'll set up a kiosk soon enough. So there you have it, Linz. So what are your thoughts on both the moon landings and the future of space travel? Are you ready to book your flight?
At the moment, no. I think I'll go to Japan before I go to the moon. So,
Let me tell you, as somebody who's trying to book flights at the moment, it's just as expensive to go to Japan right now with inflation as it is to go to the moon.
yeah, but
By the way, completely unconnected to that statement whatsoever, if you'd like to join our Patreon, it's patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio.
were you trying to get people to subscribe to the Patreon to send us to Japan/the moon, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, moon's the stretch goal. So just before we wrap this up, I'd like to talk about something that keeps me awake at night. Ooh. And I'd love to talk more about this sometime on the podcast with somebody who knows way more about this than I do. So if you happen to have a doctorate in this stuff, hit me up on Instagram. Now, as we understand it, the universe burst into creation during the Big Bang, and that provided the building blocks of the universe as we know it today. But before that, there was nothing. And how does something come from nothing? Screw that. How does everything come from nothing? The Big Bang happens, but what was going on before it? Nothing. Well, how can nothing exist? Were there other Big Bangs prior? It doesn't matter. Go back to the start. Where did it all originate from? How can something come from nothing? Will we expand to the point of contraction, and then the whole thing starts over again? Still, it doesn't matter. Go back to the start. Where did it start from? New things are created all the time via chemical or elemental reactions. But those elements have to exist in order for those reactions to occur. So what happened? The traditional answer here would be God. God did it. But how did God come into existence? Now, I'm not going to get theological here. Everyone's entitled to their beliefs. But my question is still the same, of how does something, even if that something is God, come from nothing? Put that question aside for a second. I mean, we're told that the universe is rapidly expanding, much like my waistline. But what is on the other side of the universe for it to expand into? Are there multiple universes, and are we cannibalizing them because we're the more powerful universe until suddenly we meet one where we're not that powerful and we just get eaten and then it just goes boop? Or is there just nothing and we're expanding into the nothing, creating space in the same way that the Dutch reclaim land from the sea? Except you can see the sea, you can touch it, and you can understand how you might be able to reclaim land from it. No matter how impressive a feat that is, but you can't reclaim nothing. The theories state that the observable universe has an edge, but that the universe itself is therefore infinite. But if it's infinite, how can it expand? What the fuck is going on, and do I really exist? Are my views on this clouded by my understanding of existence? And am I misunderstanding what nothing really is, or isn't, or might be? Am I pre-programmed not to understand this by some higher power? How does all of the wonders of the universe, from the aurora borealis to the joy of seeing my son go crazy at the sight of ducks in the park, all come from nothing? These are deep philosophical questions that keep me awake at night when I should be worrying about my tax returns. Answers on a postcard.
Magnets. How do they work?
Fucking magnets. How do they work?
It's okay, Chris. You're just a brain in a jar. Don't worry about it.
I mean, that would be more reassuring if I knew it. But then what's beyond the jar?
Nothing. It's just the jar. Calm down.
One man, one jar.
One man, one jar.
So we hope you've enjoyed this exploration into the unknown. And if you have your own thoughts on the moon landing, if you believe that actually it was fake and you've got some fantastic evidence to show us.
If you want to sucker punch a conspiracy theorist, boosh.
It's just not these two conspiracy theorists, please.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just stupid.
Now, if that excuse doesn't work for Alex Jones, it's not going to work for you, okay?
But it's true in my case. It might be true in his case too, but I don't have an agenda. I'm just a silly goose. Oh, by the way, we've reached a milestone. Your son said a word.
He did.
My godson said, is that his first word?
Yeah, that was his first word.
First word. Chris, present the first word.
He said, insert clip here.
So proud. Never cared about children ever, but now that I have a godson, definitely care.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. I do as well. Little things that make you happy in life. And, we might want to go to the moon. But at the same time, sometimes just hearing your son say "Dada" is is enough for a Friday.
Aww. And he has little demonic teethies bursting through, which is so cute.
So thank you very much for listening today, Linz. And next time we will be back with your story. And I hope you've got something bizarre and unusual lined up for us.
You know I have.
Hell yeah. So remember, if you want to check out any of the associated videos or pictures, the best place to go is our Instagram, which is
d.s.radio. Sorry.
And if you're feeling super generous, remember, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio.
Yes, please join us. We would love to have you there. Come and support us. We would be so happy. Please. Oh, and also, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can rate us. We would really appreciate it, and it helps us out so much.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody that sort of put our name out there recently. We've got a couple of things coming up as a result of the push that you've given us. We don't want to say what that is just yet, but thank you very much for spreading our name out there. We're starting to get a bit of momentum behind us. So thank you so much.
Yes, we really appreciate every single listener that we have, and we do interact with a lot of you on Instagram, the DMs, and we do chat a lot, and we just really appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, feel free to get in touch. If you've got a weird story you want us to look into, or you just want to show us, hey, have you seen this? Or if you just want to, let us know something, or send us a wrestling meme, all of those things we'll respond to.
Yeah, we love talking to you. So thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. Like everyone who listens. And we're so happy that you all listen to us and contact us. And it's really fun just to have this platform and get to know everybody. So thanks so much.
And if you feel that you can shed some light on what the universe is, in my little diatribe there at the end, get in touch. And we'll
Help
see
Chris
what we can do.
understand himself. He's having some issues.
My whole world is cracked open like an egg. Just like that episode of Bluey.
All because Buzz got punched some guy in the face. Chris is like, what am I?
So thank you very much, everybody. And we will see you in 2 weeks' time, right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then.
Good night.
Sleep tight.
These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble cause, the search of truth and understanding.
God, I'm going to Boris Johnson here, I think.
I was going to say, something is happening.
My throat is hurting.
I am not a crook.